I'm Algenon Cash, and you're locked in. Today, we're spotlighting a pivotal local race in Greensboro. Our guest is Denise Roth, candidate for Greensboro City Council. We're going to talk to her about her story, the challenges and opportunities facing Greensboro, from economic development and small business vitality to public safety, housing, and transportation. And we'll unpack why off-year elections are often the most consequential, yet the least intended. Denise, thank you for locking in with me. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Algenon. Good to be with you. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. You and I have known each other for a very long time. I've enjoyed
Yeah,
watching your career over the last 2 or 3 decades, it feels like. I think when I initially
thank
met
you.
you, you were at the Greensboro Partnership, if I believe, if it
That's
goes
right.
back that far. But you've
Yeah.
done a lot of great things over the years. And I guess to sort of just kick off, maybe a little introduction from our audience, help them just understand what you've been up to the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's a great opportunity to be with you. And I think it was back at the partnership that we met, which would have been about '07. So now we're both dating ourselves. That's great.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we look as young as we did then. So that's good. We met the partnership. I had a great opportunity actually to move here in 2004. So I moved to North Carolina and Greensboro in 2004 from DC, which is where my career originally started and where I was originally from. But have quickly called Greensboro home once moving here. After working with the Greensboro Partnership, where I had a chance to work on raising funds for the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering. I went to the city, and I was in the city manager's office from 2008 to 2014. And from 2012 to 2014, I was city manager, and just had an opportunity to really engage in some pivotal aspects that I'd love to see are really thriving today, such as the Tanger Center, as well as I was one of the many city managers that had a chance to work on putting in funding and supporting the development of the mega site, which the brainchild of much of our leadership community here, but especially Jim Melvin. And then from there, I had the opportunity to serve in the second Obama administration. So reported directly to President Obama, led the General Services Administration, worked on just critical aspects of national policy. Certainly, GSA is responsible for buildings and acquisitions, but also worked with Department of Justice and Homeland Security and Health and Human Services in the White House pretty frequently on domestic policy. And then since then, I left and worked with a engineering infrastructure group, working with cities across the country for the past, I guess, about 8 years. And then started consulting individually in 2024. So that is really been sort of the last 20 years in a nutshell, quite frankly.
I
It's been
think,
great.
listening to that commentary, and some of that I knew and some of it I didn't, because I sort of lost
Yeah.
touch with you when you went to work for the Obama administration. And you just really touched so many areas of professional life. I mean, you've been in the private sector, you've been in nonprofit, you've been a civic leader. I mean, you've been in an appointed position. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about how all that really, it is so often I like to remind people that when you see things getting done, so often there's people behind the scenes like you, Denise, who don't
Yeah.
always get all the visibility and the highlights, but oftentimes you're the one out in the field that's really laboring to bring these projects and these ideas and things to fruition and manifestation. But now you want to get up on stage. You want to be in an elected position. You want to be more visible. Talk a little bit about what that transition feels like and what inspired you to want to be on the city council in Greensboro.
Well, sure. And some of it goes back to my roots. I grew up pretty in sort of underserved communities and poor in DC. But I watched my mother really in our lives change when she had a chance to benefit from a public-private partnership. And that was a training program in which she was able to train to be a bank teller, then ultimately lockbox, sort of back office banking, and get her GED. And I think that was really what instilled for me the love of being in a place to create policy that changed lives. And ever since then, my career path has really just been on that trajectory of how can I do that, whether it's public or private side. How can I create a better circumstance? And really my um, sense of understanding the ingenuity that was available when you bring those two together. And so throughout my career, I've just looked for those opportunities. And here's yet another opportunity. You know, we have a major shift and change that's happening on the Greensboro City Council with a number of retirements. In a major moment in our community overall, with the level of investments that are coming here, certainly from Toyota with the 5,000 jobs, but then again with Jet Zero, we thought we had hit the pinnacle with Toyota, and then to have Jet Zero come behind with the 14,500 jobs. I really see this being a moment where we have a lot of transformation that's happening for this community, a lot of opportunity on the horizon. And the real question is, how do we leverage it in a way that's beneficial across our community, from creating good jobs to ensuring that our businesses and small businesses get, is able to grow their pipeline and development. To our young people that are coming out of the colleges and universities here, and creating a career path, to inviting in our new neighbors. As I step back and look at it, I know that the experiences I have really can help complement this moment. But as you point out, Algenon, I'm doing something that's very different for me and stepping from behind the scenes and coming out in front. And that's new. But I do feel like this is the right moment for it.
What do you feel like the community's reception has been as you're out on the campaign trail and sharing? I mean, you have such a strong and impressive background. I would not want to be your opponent in this race. You've just got such a strong resume. But what's been the community's reaction as you've been out campaigning and talking about not only maybe issues within Greensboro, but as you also discussed, these really big opportunities that are coming to Greensboro over the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, it's been a great reception. And I believe that the attraction for me as a candidate is that voters recognize someone who will be able to understand the job that's to be done and have the capabilities and expertise to help see it through. We have a lot of really strong people that are running with different levels of experience and expertise in Greensboro, and that will be certainly very valuable. I think my differentiator is really having worked with cities across the country, having a national network that I can leverage, but also being grounded in the work that I did as city manager, both as assistant city manager and city manager in the time before that I've been serving in this region. So it really gives me a chance to bring something different to voters, and they are responding positively. They're like, we believe with you that we're going to be able to get it done. Doesn't mean I have all the answers, but I definitely will use all the tools in my toolbox to help us get there.
I'm a huge advocate for regionalism, and I learned that from a mutual friend of ours, Robbie Perkins, who
Yeah.
for the last 20 or 30 years, I think that's all he's been talking about is regionalism, and I think it's so important. If you were able to get this seat on City Council in Greensboro, what's your perspective of how the triad continues to collaborate to create regional growth? Now, I firmly believe that Greensboro, with some of the announcements they've made recently and then some of the investments they've made, it's beyond clear to me that Greensboro is the leader of the triad regional economy. However, a rising tide should also lift all boats. So, what's your perspective of how Greensboro continues to collaborate with its neighbors?
Well, something that I am really excited about, not that the 20,000 or so jobs isn't enough, but it's also the pathways that are created from that. With these companies come supply chain and suppliers that really bring a pretty strong depth in terms of innovation, in terms of advanced manufacturing. And with the research and capabilities that we have on our campuses across the region, it really creates an outlet and an opportunity for, like you said, all rising tides lifting all boats. We have the opportunity at this moment not only to fulfill the mission of those firms, but also to create new innovation, to really be a hub that is attractive and that is expanding and utilizing all of the city's capabilities across the region, as well as the universities, as well as businesses and small businesses as well. So I think that the opportunity is exponential, even above what we're going to see with these positions.
Anytime someone decides to run for office, I often say this jokingly, but sometimes seriously. People either run for office because they're really mad about something and they feel like they got to get in and fix it, or oftentimes people run for office because they're crazy. Now, I know that you're not crazy, and I know you're very smart and intelligent. So what is it that you feel like maybe isn't working right in Greensboro and your expertise and background will be able to address once you get on council?
Well, as I started at the beginning, in terms of where I grew up, I do see parts of Greensboro. And as you pointed out, this is a regional opportunity across the region that are also underinvested in. And that is, this moment creates an opportunity to create good jobs, to create strong career paths, as well as to invite in investment and development in a way that hasn't existed before. Something that you hear quite a bit in Greensboro as we talk about in East Greensboro in particular is where will the investment come? How do we bring different levels of income? How do we advance the economic position for those in this part of our city? This is those moments that can create that. And I want us to make sure we don't miss this moment across the board. I also want to ensure that that we don't miss the moment collectively for this region. There is the potential to have just the growth happen around us. We should have smart growth. We should have growth that's thinking about how do we leverage this moment for every aspect of our community in that and for us to get prepared and positioned well for it. So that's where I see the vulnerability. That's where I really want to step into.
You said 20,000 jobs are coming to Greensboro. I know the Carolina Corps, I think they've got some announcement out there that cumulatively they've created or generated 70,000 jobs for the region.
Yeah.
I mean, which is just a huge number. Typically, Denise, when these people come to town or they move into your community, they love to have a place to stay, a roof over their head. They want to make sure the child has a good school to go to. They don't want to be in traffic all morning while they're trying to get to that new job that they moved here for. What are your thoughts about the infrastructure that's needed in Greensboro and maybe even regionally as we continue to grow and see so many people showing up at our doorstep? How do we keep pace with some of that growth? And specifically within housing, where we're already seeing a current housing crisis, which can only be exacerbated as we continue to grow as rapidly as we do.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right to point that out. One of the great things is we do have a number of key highways that are running through this area. We do have this uh, sort of theme of activity that's happening at the regional airport here. So there's a lot of good things in that regard. But we have to prepare and think critically about what's coming. As you point out, we're already behind in our housing needs, right? But there's also the moment of thinking about, is this time for us to plan for a commuter rail or something of that nature that connects this region? Yes, those efforts do take 10 years to bring to bear sometimes, or somewhere in between 5 to 10 years. But if we start now, we're going to be in a much better position to be able to support the growth as it happens. We have to think about our public safety, fire, police, our ability to connect and be prepared there. I also think this is the moment for us to think broadly about housing and the housing approach, bringing in diverse type of housing types, whether multifamily, but as well as duplexes and housing that is thinking about single individuals, small families, young people that will ultimately grow into larger families. This is a chance for us to both understand what those different types of concepts and mechanisms will mean, how we invite them in, and put them in place.
Robbie Perkins listens to the show quite often. So Robbie, if you're listening, be on the watch out because Denise sounds real mayoral right now with this vision and
You can have it.
imagination that you're sharing with me right now. I absolutely love it, Denise. I think we have to be talking about large scale infrastructure projects like you just mentioned with light rail. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think that's something that should just be isolated to the Charlotte region. I mean, when you look at what happened when then Mayor Pat McCrory really championed the idea of light rail, I mean, you just saw explosive growth and development throughout that entire region along that rail line. And so I think we have an opportunity to do that here in the Triad. I think Greensboro, quite frankly, is probably most well positioned to lead that discussion here in the region. And I hope your fellow council members and others will come along for that discussion. You spent some time in the city manager's office, and a lot of times real estate folks like me would argue one reason you're not seeing the expansion in housing is because of some of the restrictive zoning. You have this sort of element of NIMBYism right now, where a lot of neighbors don't want high density development in their communities. They feel like it's going to bring the property values down. How do you use some of your expertise to sort of work within these strict zoning requirements so that maybe we can deliver more housing units a little bit more rapidly?
Yeah, I mean, I like to work with the end in mind, right? And work with the concept of how do we get to yes. I do think, and something I treasure about Greensboro is some of our communities, and we do need to keep intact the communities that are here, but we also have to understand how we invite that transition and transformation to happen around the edges and in transitional parts of our community that are butting up against commercial areas that we can also bring in these different housing types. I also think from an internal standpoint, I know that the city staff has been looking at different zoning approaches and policies, but it's one thing to have a policy, it's a whole other thing to work with development community and say, how do we make happen what we want to happen? Let's start with the end in mind and let's work backwards from there. I really think that that is it's the same coin, but a different side of the same coin. And if we can help make that shift and really incentivize staff to look for and be really receive accolades for looking at different approaches and helping to create new approaches for our community, it will be important. The reality is that the growth is coming, the people are coming, the expansion is coming, and how well we are suited for it will be really up to us in these especially over the next horizon of the next 5 years.
Yeah, I love the idea of trying to take injecting that level of innovation within the city manager's office and really trying to help city staff to understand that they are also customer service agents to some degree, right? Like you want these developers, you want these people coming into your community and expanding your tax base and making capital investments. And oftentimes, it doesn't happen because they just feel like they're not being treated fairly, in the zoning department or within permits or whatever. I spent quite a bit of time with Trevick. I think that's when you
Yes,
and I initially
that's where we
met. I
first
was
met.
I was
Yeah.
working on the governmental affairs committee, and I think they've just done tremendous work at trying to bring government, but also the private sector real estate community together. You talk about the expansion that's coming. You're spot on. I mean, I think it's not coming. I think it's already here, and
Mm. Yeah, I think
we're
you're right.
growing by leaps and bounds. Past 5 years, North Carolina has been recognized as one of the best states to do business in across the country. I think
Mm.
Greensboro and the Carolina core is really benefiting from a lot of those accolades and that recognition. But we also want to make sure that ordinary citizens can benefit. What are your thoughts around workforce development, workforce training? You have all these new jobs coming into town. You want to make sure, though, that some of those people that really need an opportunity also have the technical skill set to be ready for it.
Absolutely. And I believe in micro certification concepts of bringing to bear the idea of either letting someone who is currently in a position but thinking about a different career path be able to test their capabilities and get certified and what these new roles will demand for capabilities. You know, the upside with having such a broad workforce need that's coming online, there will be a real spectrum of need that will be there. And so it will present these opportunities. So to the extent that we're working with our community colleges, but also our four-year colleges to tap into the strength and capability there will be essential. But also introducing to our K-12, also connecting to in really lifting up technical capabilities as a career path, skills trades as a career path will be important. But as you talk about how this can be a moment of opportunity across the board. I really do think so at every level, from the executive level to front line, and to the extent that we can sort of break up what that looks like and make it accessible to average workers who are, dreaming about what next steps look like, or people who are wanting to step out in different ways. We should create a really strong partnership between us, between the public individuals in the private sector to create those career pathways. And what that looks like, I think when you talk about career service days, or career days, having just a industry day of
Hmm.
understanding the industry that's coming, understanding and exploring with partners across the country who have had similar industries there. What does that look like? What are the different levels of positions that can be available? I've been talking to a group that really specializes in understanding supply chain and sort of mapping current industry to future supply chain. I would love to see us go through that process and really sort of invite in, I think, to the extent that we can get ahead of the growth that will come, it will position our people better. And I think that's what this moment can bring for us, Algernon.
No, I think you're right. I mean, when you're going through this level of explosive growth, you really have the opportunity to generate a lot of economic mobility for your
Mhm.
citizens. And I think that, here in Winston, what I witnessed is when we went through developing our innovation quarter and we started recruiting all these life science companies into the quarter, the one thing that we didn't do was make sure ordinary citizens were aware and trained and developed and ready for those jobs that would get created in the innovation quarter. So what we've seen here in Winston is a lot of people from outside our community and outside our state, which we love them. I'm not saying we don't love them. We welcome them.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
we haven't seen the level of economic mobility for our own citizens as a result of that innovation quarter. And so I learned a valuable lesson there. I think that we have to be proactive about making sure the citizens are ready for these opportunities to come. Public safety has really gotten thrusted back into the mainstream conversation recently, obviously with some of
Mhm.
the news that we've heard in the last couple of days, as well as the brutal stabbing that happened down in Charlotte, North Carolina. This
Mm.
current presidential administration is certainly shining a big spotlight on public safety. How would you describe the current situation in Greensboro, the relationship between the police and the community?
Yeah, I've been having a number of interviews, as you can imagine, through this process, and having really good dialogue to an opportunity to listen to where concerns are, and where opportunity for growth exists for us. I think one of the main things that we have to ensure is that we continue to have a path in a existing platform in which there is constant dialogue between community and police. There is strong support for our chief of police across the board, is what I'm finding both inside City Hall and outside. But there is a strong desire from the community to ensure that they're being heard, and that they have a pathway in. To have dialogue with police, especially when concerning items occur, right? We don't want to be the first time that conversations are happening. Chief Thompson gets really strong reports, and I think that the opportunity, as we have the council change over as well, is to reestablish, or sort of reset or reinforce those foundations, so that there is strong connectivity between community and police, especially, like I said, before incidents occur, that trust is there.
Denise, someone is listening to this conversation or watching this conversation and thinking, what are they talking about an election? The election was last year. We don't have another election until 2028. They're in the
Yeah.
wrong year here. Denise,
Yeah.
around the country and obviously within Greensboro, there are so many people that don't pay attention to these off-year local election races. I think on average in Greensboro, you guys probably get somewhere around 10 to 15% turnout in an off year like this.
Absolutely.
I know my audience is tired of hearing me say what I'm getting ready to say, and they already anticipate it. But I continue to want to remind my audience that the most important election, the most important race that's happening in your life is probably the city council race, the county commissioners, the school board. Those are the bodies of people that really have an influence and can touch your life on a day-to-day basis. It's not what's happening in Washington, D.C. It's not what's happening in Congress. It's not what's happening on Pennsylvania Avenue. Although they do make a lot of noise and they do get a lot of light and they do suck up a lot of oxygen in the room, but it's the Greensboro City Council race. It's someone like Denise Roth on City Council that's going to have such a huge impact in your day-to-day life. So, Denise, what are you guys doing to just sort of wake up the citizens of Greensboro and let them know that there's an election this year? And in fact, I think early
Yeah.
voting starts in the next few days.
Yeah, early voting starts September 18th, next Thursday, so a week from yesterday. So you're absolutely right. And I really do believe in trying to get directly to voters. So there's a lot of yard signs out there, certainly, as well as billboards. But the yard signs that are in individual yards is the ones I pay the most attention to because someone went through the effort to get that one there. But so for me, it's we actually made 4,000 calls to solid voters across the city, and happy to report 40% of them both knew who I was and was planning to vote for me. So that was a good starting point. You never know where that ends up. Planning to actually text to people. You're used to political text. You'll be getting text from me and video. I'm doing whatever I can to, and then pop-up events. I'm just trying to get in front of voters. You're right, Algenon, it's 10% of like 300 and some thousand people. And to really find them and get in front of them is really essential. But yeah, we need to do better at getting people engaged in our local elections because there's major things that are happening. These are 4-year terms. That's pretty significant.
Well, I look at what's happening right now in Winston-Salem with our school system and,
Mm.
the number of jobs that have been terminated as a result of the financial crisis, the programs that are being curtailed, the schools that are potentially being shut down. So again, I reiterate to my audience, these local elections, these local elected bodies, those are the people that are having influence and impact over your day-to-day life, your family's day-to-day life, your kids and so forth. Those are issues that are typically not resolved in Congress. Those are issues that are not chimed in on by President Trump. So you have to really, really pay attention to some of these local elections. Denise, why do you think that people are so disengaged when it comes to
Mm.
off-year local elections? What is it? Just a lack of civic understanding? Is it just a lack of concern, or how would you label that?
Yeah, I think that it might be a little bit of all the above, Algernon, possibly, and people are busy. And so just really being able to tune into what's happening, it can be challenging just in and of itself. We also are needing to benefit from reporting from groups such as yours that bring it to people directly in their homes, because people are getting information from different places. So that makes it difficult as well. So we got to do more to bring the news directly to people.
Here's my last question for you. I mean, and I definitely want you to make sure you mention again, when does the election start, your website, all that kind of stuff, so people know where to go. But to that person that is they just heard what you said. I think what you said just now was profound. I'm busy. I got kids and we got volleyball practice and baseball practice and I got to go to the grocery store. I got to clean the house. I got all these things going on. What would you say to that person, Denise? What is that thing that you would say to them that makes it register for them? This is really important too. As much as I
Yeah.
know you need to go to softball practice or soccer practice or whatever you've got on your schedule, this should be a priority as well.
I would say to them that, as a mother and as an executive, I know why they do what they do. They do it because they want their families to have a secured future. And with that in mind, that's why you pay attention. You want to ensure that your kids have everything they possibly can and to live their best lives and project forward the best that they are. And you want their community to be able to meet them where they are and for them to have opportunity. And as an executive, we invest in our communities. We look for strong talent. We want people to stay here and to be a part of our community. And that is very much influenced by what happens at local city council. So I say that for the same reasons that you're busy, be busy noticing what's happening in your local government because it's also impacting what you're trying to drive.
I totally agree. Hey, Denise, for anyone that might have missed it, remind them when is early voting? When is the actual election day? How do they get in touch with you? How do they learn more about your platform?
Thank you. Yes. So early voting starts next Thursday, October 18th. There will be several locations. They're going to start with one. They'll expand from there. It runs through October 4th. The primary is October 7th. I can be found at Denise Roth for citycouncil.com. And please take the moment to listen, sign up, volunteer. I need people to help spread the word and make sure that we are all getting out to vote. So I appreciate your time in this platform.
Denise, I appreciate your time and I also appreciate the clarity. And for everyone listening, local elections shape your day-to-day life, from roads and zoning to parks, public safety, and small business support. If you heard something today that aligns with your values, donate to a local campaign that you believe in, whether it's Denise or another candidate who reflects your priorities. 10, 20, $50 fuels field work, voter education, and turnout. And also, if you enjoy this content, you can get in touch with me to also donate to our program so that we can continue bringing you this level of hyper local news. I always appreciate you locking in with me. Make sure you stay tuned to WTOB because that's where you can lock in every Sunday morning. But if you happen to miss me there, you can always catch me on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, wherever you like to get your favorite podcasts. You can always lock in there. Until next time, y'all stay locked in.